Hi everyone, I'm Daniel. Welcome to Just One Truth. This is part 3 of Decoding the Gospel of Thomas. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about how I do this. I've already covered that in parts number 1 and parts number 2, and very extensively in all of my previous videos on what I'm really about. Before I proceed, I do want to say that what I look for is the reason for magic and miracles, or why we might experience some sort of phenomena, mentally or physically, in the world that we can't explain, that there's no physical reason for it, that it looks like it comes from beyond. I've had some experiences that caused me to realize there's something there. However, as I spent my life looking for what that is, I never found anything outside of me. Everything that I found was inside of me. And regardless of what I studied in the world, whether it was Eastern or Western, whether it was religious or inner-looking spiritual, what I found was that nested inside of all of them was the same teaching. And that everything that we see, that we attribute to some sort of external gods or demons or angels or some sort of supernatural forces, are not supernatural. They're natural. It does happen. Magic and miracles can and do happen, but it's due to us. And then the quest became, how do I improve that? How do I reach nirvana? How do I reach the kingdom of heaven within? How do I find purity? How do I take care of the pain that I have in my life and use this practice to improve the quality of my life? And that's what these videos for me are about, showing everybody the path that I found to get from the pain that I had to the joy that I now live, and basically that all of the teachings from our past, from antiquity, nest the same teaching, and that everything that we believe is supernatural is actually natural. We just haven't found all the mechanisms for it yet, but we can see how it works and we can apply techniques to improve it. I have found that by basically eliminating all of the cultural, religious, or spiritual explanations for it, you can distill it down to something that's a little more practical, easy to work with, and doesn't require a lot of worship to something that is external or ritual that you must go through over and over again. That there's a reason for those things to happen. There's a reason to do those, but there's something happening in the brain, that it's really the brain that is what is making it all happen. So you can bypass all of those other rituals and all of those other things that are difficult to understand and get right to the nitty-gritty by understanding the mechanics of what's going on. In fact, I believe throughout all of the teachings, and here is an example from Jesus, we see something that is said that alludes to that very idea. This is in the dialogue of the Savior, and I'm just going to cover this one verse here real quick. This one did not survive all that well, so there's some words missing, but you can get the idea. Matthew said, "Lord, when I speak, who is it who and who listens?" We kind of get the idea that he's asking, when I'm talking, who is it that's listening? Those included words are just my best guess based on the upcoming response. And the Lord said, "It is the one who speaks, who also listens, and it is the one who can see, who also reveals." Your brain is the one that's wiring. Whatever you say, whatever you do, whatever you experience, it's happening up here, not elsewhere. And to me, that very much sounds like what you are is what you say, and what you say is what you are. We are a product of our mentality, and our mentality creates our world. That having been said, in part 2, we left off at verse number 18, so we're going to pick up on verse number 19 starting now. The Gospel of Thomas, verse 19, Jesus says, "Blessed is he who was before he came into being. If you become disciples of mine and listen to my words, these stones will serve you. For you have 5 trees in paradise that do not change during summer and winter, and their leaves do not fall. Whoever comes to know them will not taste death. Okay, something I mentioned in the last video, and I'll reiterate it here. Some of the stuff is kind of weird, and I don't quite see a way to decode it. I'm very curious to hear what your thoughts are. If you've got some idea, again, something that doesn't involve supernatural explanations, I'd like to hear about it in the comments below. In this case, we have, "Blessed is he who was before he came into being." Now, it's possible that that one lines up with verse 18 in part 2, where the disciples said to Jesus, "Tell us how our end will be." And he said, "Have you discovered the beginning that you are now asking about the end?" We talked about that one a little bit. In this case, I'll tell you, I don't see a way to turn this one inward and see that it provides some sort of a highly significant or life-changing epiphany about life and about a spiritual search that makes you go, "Oh, I need to accomplish this right here." I don't see that in here. Blessed is he who was before he came into being. Another thought that I had on this was coming into being means as you grow up, you become yourself. When you start out in life, you are kind of an empty shell. You grow, you develop, you learn, you become whatever it is you become. And depending on where you are in the world and how you're raised and who raised you, you become a product of that environment. Is that what he's talking about, coming into being? Blessed is he who was before he came into being. To me, that kind of sounds like the idea, possibly, that maybe you were raised in a place where you understood that you were a product of your environment. You were taught critical thinking. We know today that you can be raised in an environment, I'll use myself as an example, where you were hurt, you were abused, you were really treated in a poor way. You grow up angry, you grow up wanting to drink and be out of control. And it's not because you're a bad person, although that's what it looks like. It is because you have been molded with very bad things, and you don't know how to handle it. You've never been taught any different. And we get to a point like this in life where we're thinking, "Oh, I want to change my life. I'm understanding this. I realize I have to rectify my past." We're not quite into that category of blessed is he who was before he came into being. That might be describing the people who grew up in homes that were not like ours. If you're like me, you probably also went to school with or knew people who were not raised this way. They had parents that were, they loved them. They cared for each other. They held hands. They hugged. You saw things happening that you thought, well, how does that happen? You saw kids that were helpful towards each other while you just wanted to kind of stay inside yourself, and you weren't that kind of an outgoing, helpful person. You had a lot of different kind of issues. You might also be in an environment where perhaps you're in a Buddhist community. Not everybody's monks, but everybody is Buddhist, and that they all understand that teaching. You're looking for nirvana, and they raise their children knowing that it doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what you do. None of those things matter. We love, we care, and when everybody loves and cares, that's the community and that's the environment. And it's possible that that is what this means. Blessed is he who was before he came into being. Blessed is he who is the person that understood what they were becoming before they became that. I don't know. I'm throwing that out as an idea. This is one I struggle with to interpret. The next verse, "If you become disciples of mine and listen to my words, these stones will serve you." Again, we have reference to the stones from a previous verse, and I don't know what those are. Remember when Jesus took one of the disciples off to the side and told him some things, 3 things. And when he came back and his companions asked him, "What did Jesus tell you?" And he said, "If I tell you one of the things he told me, you will pick up stones and throw them at me, and fire will come out of the stones and burn you up." We see some pretty obscure references to stones. The stones will serve you if you become disciples of mine. Okay, well, sounds good though. We are disciples, aren't we? Are we disciples? Yeah, we are. We're looking for answers anywhere and everywhere. We're grabbing onto anything possible and making sense out of it to improve the quality of our life. We're somebody's disciples. Lao Tzu's, Buddha's, Jesus, anybody who teaches that says, here is the way to nirvana, to find the way, to find the kingdom of heaven within. Yeah, we're disciples of all of that. So the stones are serving us. What are the stones? I don't know. Possibly the stones are the teaching itself, the representation of the teaching, something that is very solid, something that is very, I don't know, grounded. The next one, you have 5 trees in paradise that do not change during summer and winter, and their leaves do not fall. This one I'm going to gloss over to do more research and get back to it. Honestly, I believe that because of where Jesus was coming from and because he was Jewish, that this has to do with the 5 trees, reference to the 5 worlds in the Jewish Kabbalah that have to do with, it's a descriptive of dimensional levels related to the soul's progress towards unity with or return to the Creator. And of course, we're looking for unity. Jesus' teaching is make the 2 into 1, enter like the kingdom of heaven like a child, things of that nature. So I believe that it would be along those lines. Some of the things that we already know about this path of discovery, this path of getting to nirvana, the kingdom of heaven within, is that there are certain processes. Number one, when you start out in life, you just become whatever it is you become. And you're not in control of that necessarily, but you become a product of that environment. And one of the first steps is realizing that and understanding that you are simply a product, and what you've been told is what you've been programmed with. So stop right now and begin to question everything that you believe. Another one is to realize that your world and your entire environment is a reflection of who and what you are, and to become cognizant of what you are by recognizing the quality and the nature of your environment. There's certain things that we do along this path that helps you begin to understand yourself and to make changes in yourself so that your environment then changes. And I suspect that that's what the 5 trees have to do with. Regardless, that's the path we're on anyway. So a lot of these teachings are repetitive. We don't find 100 different verses here that mean 100 different things. We find 100 different verses here that mean 10 different things. So let's just move on from there and hit on the ones that are a little bit easier to understand. I do want to return to these. And I encourage you, if you know this stuff and you're familiar with it, to go, put some comments down below. Add to it. Let's work together on it. I'm all about that. Okay. And then, of course, in the last line, he goes on to say, once again, whoever comes to know them will not taste death. And once again, we presume that this is spiritual death, not physical death. We don't get to violate the laws of nature. So we're going to take this as a spiritual teaching, and it means our spirit and soul then, and it means about our spiritual life and our spiritual death. Death is living life, not knowing you're programmed and just living that out. Life is realizing that you're living a program and then changing your programming. You're now in charge. You're now alive. Okay, moving on now to verse number 20. The disciples said to Jesus, "Tell us whom the kingdom of heaven is like." He said to them, "It is like a mustard seed. It is the smallest of all seeds. But when it falls on cultivated soil, it produces a large branch and becomes a shelter for the birds of the sky." Okay, here's a fun one, but it seems rather standard. The kingdom of heaven within, the state of being, the peaceful, loving, joyous, I'm good state of being. What is that like? It's like a mustard seed in the smallest of all seeds, but when it falls on cultivated soil is your garden, metaphorically, your mind. You have to have the kind of mind that is receptive to this. You could tell this to people who would say, that's crap, that's not the way life is. You have to deal with what is going on out there. They are never going to have what we would consider cultivated soil. That's just the way it is. And they won't understand that. So that's actually something that in a little bit we're going to see a verse that references that as well, how this is just not for everybody. But additionally, not only does this apply to minds that are not fertile, that are not going to do this, but we also have to consider that within ourselves, we contain parts of us that are not fertile. That's not everybody. Some people don't carry with them a lot of pain and hurt and shame that they want to keep tucked away. For those of us that have, or that still do, those are parts of us that are also referenced to non-fertile areas. If you've got some pain, some shame, something that you know about and you've got it tucked away and you don't want it to come out, you're intentionally leaving weeds in your garden. You are intentionally, maybe without knowing it, the fear and the shame is winning. In order for you to overcome that, you have to understand and realize that it is an impediment to your success. That to the degree that you want to have enlightenment or reach nirvana or the kingdom of heaven within is the degree that you're going to have to clean out your garden or to have a fertile mind. So if your mind is fertile enough that you want to do this and you find things along the way that you need to deal with, you have to have the courage to deal with that stuff. Anyway, that's another example of the verse working outward, also working inward. Okay, moving on. Next verse, number 21. Mary said to Jesus, "Whom are your disciples like?" He said, "They are like servants who are entrusted with a field that is not theirs. When the owners of the field arrive, they will say, 'Let us have our field.' But they are naked in their presence, so as to let them have it and thus to give them their field. When the master of the house learns that the thief is about to come, he will be on guard before he comes and will not let him break into his house, his domain, to carry away his possessions. But you be on guard against the world. Gird your loins with great strength, so that the robbers will not find a way to get you. For the necessities for which you wait with longing will be found. There ought to be a wise person among you." When the fruit was ripe, he came quickly with his sickle in his hand, and he harvested it. Whoever has ears to hear should hear. Okay, we've got a large group here. Fun stuff to go through. First of all, whom are your disciples like? Who are disciples? We understand Jesus' disciples. But in reality, we are all disciples. Anybody who is on this path. If you're following the teachings of Jesus, the Christ consciousness, you would be considered a disciple. Buddha has monks. There are people who are followers who do what they can to learn and then live that life. We are all disciples in the same way that we're all monks. We're all seekers of this knowledge. We're all seekers of their teaching. How did they reach nirvana? How did they get to the kingdom of heaven within? Okay, next line. I am going to string the next 3 lines together, actually, because they belong together. And this is fun. This is incredible. He said they are like servants who are entrusted with a field that is not theirs. When the owners of the field arrive, they will say, "Let us have our field." But they are naked in their presence, so as to let them have it, and thus to give them their field. You know, as crazy as that sounds, this is it. This is an incredibly important and a very telling verse. This one, when you turn it inward and make yourself the metaphoric representations of everything within the teaching and make it about your subconscious mind, this one blows open a lot of stuff. It's things that we've covered before, but in this verse right here, it becomes very clear. Okay, so first off, the field, we know what that is now. It's our brain. It's our perceptions. It is everything about our thoughts, our perceptions, our beliefs, what we want out, what we want to talk freely about, and what we don't want to talk freely about, the things that we want to hide. Our field is the brain, the empty brain, and the fertile ground for all of those things. The servants are the things that possess us. The servants are in charge. The servants have come about as a result of our life experiences and our perceptions. The field does not belong to them. It belongs to our conscious desires. But it has been turned over to the things that we believe. Those are our servants. Our perceptions, our fears, our love, all of those things. You could say that the servants are taking care of the fields in our absence in the same way that you can say that our subconscious mind is taking care of our life when we're not paying attention to it. When we want to pay attention to it, we want it back. It is our field. We want it. We want it back. We want it back from the servants. So we come back and say, we want our field. We're on this path. We're looking to clean house. But they are naked in their presence so as to let them have it and thus give them their field. Naked in this case is spiritual nakedness. When we clothe ourselves in spiritual garments, we hide our nudity, our openness, our raw spirituality behind things that we have picked up through life. Our fear, shame, hatred, prejudice, judgment, all of those things that are characteristics that are unbecoming of what it takes to get to the kingdom of heaven within, or to nirvana, the place where you just have love, joy, and peace. By stripping that off, and stripping it off means being able to open up about it, being able to talk about it, or being free of it in some way, shape, or form. I always use that term, be able to talk about it. And I know a lot of people really have a difficult time with that. I sure did. Before I got to a certain point where I could talk out my biggest shames, being molested and all of the things that I was like, oh my God, I will never tell anybody this stuff. Those were the servants that were handling the field, and it didn't belong to them, and I wanted it back from them. Metaphorically, in the same way that the garments that we wear, the clothes that we wear, hides what we look like physically, the things that we put on, that we hide behind, our dishonesty, our inability to be open, the things that are hidden away because they are behind shame and pain and fear and this perception that you have that you realize isn't okay, hides the pure soul inside. And the reason we do that is because we don't have a pure soul inside. And remember, I am approaching this as if the subconscious mind is what this teaching is about. It's not about a heart. It's not about an energy entity that is inside of you. You can't touch those. But you can do something with this. And if we apply it there, if we apply the teaching to our thoughts, to our perceptions, to our brain, suddenly we got a hold of something. And honestly, for me, telling somebody about it is what broke through that barrier. I don't know if there are other processes. I know what worked for me. And I know this, that if you are truly effective at it, if you do it yourself and say, I'm not going to tell anybody, I can manage it myself, go for it. In today's culture, there are a lot of classes, a lot of gurus, a lot of places that will take you through meditative processes. Kundalini comes to mind as one that is designed to help people get through this stuff. And for me, their effectiveness was just so slow. You had to continually meditate, continually think, and at some point you realize that this is going to be a forever, lifelong thing. Now, your results may vary. I am not in any way, shape, or form attempting to tell you what works and what doesn't work. I want to reemphasize I'm telling you what I did and what worked for me. I found that just by facing what I didn't want to face, going through the pain of that and dealing with it, that the fix action was nearly instantaneous. It didn't take a long time. And when it came down to comprehending and looking at the mechanics of what was really happening, understanding that your brain was holding a memory and the emotional state, and that every process you're using is designed to make that okay. When in all reality, if you look at it and say, okay, I can't change what happened, but I can change the emotional state, and you put practice at that, at forgiving, at looking at who the perpetrator was, even if it's yourself, and finding the ways to become okay with it, you didn't have to meditate for 20 years while still sneaking off and hiding the fact that you have things that you don't want to talk to people about. It was just putting on a Band-Aid over and over again, when in all reality, you could affect a healing. But it's hard. It doesn't feel good. But once you do it, you walk on water. And don't beat me up for saying that. That's a metaphor. You just feel great. You feel wonderful. You've let go of what's weighing you down. You've cast off your anchors. You let go of your baggage. Pull the weeds out of your garden. Made friends with the skeletons in your closet. Exorcised your demons. All of the metaphoric things that mean you fixed all that crap you carry. You've gotten rid of it. You don't get rid of it. You become okay with it. You learn how to accept it and be okay with it. Here's how you test whether or not you've been effective. When you get done and you've resolved it, if you can talk about it like it's no big deal, then you've resolved it. If at the end of the day you say, I've took care of it, but I'm never going to tell anybody, it's not taken care of. You're fooling yourself. Okay, that's it. That's the verse. You can basically look at it like, as we were growing up, our servants came about and they took over the field and they managed it. We're at a point where we want it back. So we're going back and telling our servants, it's ours. We want this back. We want this space for ourselves. And only in stripping the servants naked, by exposing them, by looking at them, by seeing them in their raw, pure form, and getting rid of the pain and the shame and the hurt, the prejudice, the beliefs that other people don't measure up because they're a color or a belief or anything like that. All of the things that we possess that are not the things that we would want for ourselves. We must expose all of that to ourselves. And only in the completion of that action do we get our field back. And that's how this verse unfolds. Before I continue on with the remainder of verse 21 in the Gospel of Thomas here, I want to jump to the Gospel of Philip really quick. There's a paragraph in there that absolutely shores up everything that we just covered. So let me read this and let's put these pieces together. And the reason I want to do that is because this is, in my opinion, so key. This is really enlightenment right here. This is the process. It's on page 111 in the version that I posted in the notes down below. Most things in the world, as long as their inner parts are hidden, stand upright and live. If they are revealed, they die, as is illustrated by the visible man. As long as the intestines of a man are hidden, the man is alive. When his intestines are exposed and come out of him, the man will die. So also with the tree, while its root is hidden, it sprouts and grows. If its root is exposed, the tree dries up. So it is with every birth that is in the world, not only with the revealed, but with the hidden. For so long as the root of wickedness is hidden, it is strong. But when it is recognized, it is dissolved. When it is revealed, it perishes. That is why the word says, already the axe is laid at the root of the trees. That's a reference to Matthew 3:10. It will not merely cut. What is cut sprouts again. But the axe penetrates deeply until it brings up the root. Jesus pulled out the root of the whole place, while others did it only partially. As for ourselves, let each one of us dig down after the root of evil which is within one, and let one pluck it out of one's heart from the root. It will be plucked out if we recognize it. But if we are ignorant of it, it takes root in us and produces its fruit in our heart. It masters us. We are its slaves. It takes us captive to make us do what we do not want. And what we do want, we do not do. It is powerful because we have not recognized it. While it exists, it is active. Ignorance is the mother of all evil. Ignorance will result in death because those who come from ignorance neither were, nor are, nor shall be, and it goes on. Okay, you get the idea. The reference here being the tree, the root. If you just chop it down, it grows back. If you have something that manifests out of you, it grows from your garden, and it's not good and you want to get rid of it, you can't just deal with it at the surface and say, I'm sorry, I won't do that again. I don't know why I do that. There's a root in there. There's a source. There's a point of origin for that behavior, for that activity. And from that point of origin, whatever it was, some sort of a belief, some sort of an action, something that happened to you or something that you did to somebody, somewhere along the way is the root of this action. And it continues to emerge. And as long as you don't go after the root and you ignore it, it continues to come out and it masters you. And the way to get rid of it is to look at it, to bring it out, to bring it into the open. When you recognize it, when you cease being ignorant of it, then it ceases functioning. It quits working on its terms once you acknowledge what it is, how it got there, and that, oh well, it's okay. Life goes on. In some way, you need to find a way to be mentally okay with it. And you know that by thinking about it, by watching life unfold. If the behavior that normally went with it ceases, you've got it rectified. If you can talk about it and think about it and you're like, oh well, okay, I'm okay with it now, then it's taken care of. But if you continue to act out, if you continue to get angry, if you continue to lash out, if you continue to withdraw, if you continue to hate certain people for certain things because it hinges on something inside of you, it's not taken care of. So the verse in the Gospel of Thomas about the field and the servants, those are the same thing metaphorically as the roots, as the trees, as the things that are there. All of these teachings bring us back to the point of looking inside, looking into our heart and looking into our soul, which today we know is something that we maintain in our thought process and in our brain. And of course, depending on how far you are along this idea of making it about yourself and looking at this and treating it like a personal teaching as opposed to a teaching about the spirit world out there someplace, you recognize other things in it. The idea that Jesus cleaned out the whole place while others did it only partially. The idea that when we don't take care of those things, it makes us do things we don't want to, while at the same time, when we're trying to do things, it interferes and prevents us from doing that. That verse could probably have an episode on its own, but I better leave that. This is about decoding the Gospel of Thomas. Okay, returning to verse 21 then, remember we left off where we were the owners of the field. We had just gone back and recovered it from the servants after they stripped naked and were able to give it to us. We are now at this line. That is why I say, when the master of the house learns that the thief is about to come, he will be on guard before he comes and will not let him break into his house, his domain, to carry away his possessions. Okay, this verse follows up with the last verse, although it uses different verbiage. It uses a different metaphor. We've got our field back. In this set of verses, though, we've changed that to a house. We are the master of the house. The house is us. This is our domicile, full of our rooms and everything else. We are the master of the house, and the thief is about to come. We need to be on guard before he comes and not let him break into the house. We have begun this path. We are looking for the kingdom of heaven within. We're seeking nirvana. We're making the changes. We're clearing out what we have in our heads that prevents that. As we go along, we're going to have problems. We're going to have old habits that want to come up, friends that want to continue patterns that are things that you're ultimately leaving behind. There are things you're going to want to do that take you back off the path. That is represented by the thief, the things that are going to come and try to take your goods, your possessions. And your possessions are the peace, the love, the caring. You're going to find that as you're on this path, you're going to struggle, that as you work through issues, that you're still accustomed to habitually acting out in other ways. So I know I made it sound sometimes like you just snap your fingers and there's a change, but that's not really the way it works. Neural pathways take a little while to change in the brain. Habits take a while. Even if you realize, I've got to do something different, and you know why, and you apply whatever thought process you need to make the changes, you're still, when you're not paying attention, going to be wanting to do old things. And that's what this one alludes to, is the idea that you need to pay attention when you get on this path and be aware of the fact that you're going to struggle. Next one, but you be on guard against the world. Same thing. It's the world out there that are all the issues that are going to come at you, all of the temptations, all of the things that you did when you were not on this path. Be on guard against that. Gird your loins with great strength, so that the robbers will not find a way to get to you. There you go, same thing. Be prepared. Have courage, intestinal fortitude. Yeah, that's it. For the necessities for which you wait with longing will be found. You will, with patience, persevere. If you stay on the course and you continue to fight the things or reject the things, be aware of the things, to deny the things that take you off this course, you will get there. This one's like a version of seek and you will find, knock and it will be opened. If you are really driving for this, the things will happen. That's just part of the magic that people think is something external to them, but it's something that everybody has. Your drive, your mental drive and desire, and whatever the cosmos has, I don't know, but things will be drawn into you that are the things you need for your path. And it is still entirely okay in this process if you want to credit God or the cosmos or your meditation capacity with your chakras, whatever you need to focus on to make it work. That's okay. That's an additional layer. Like I said, I've distilled it down to realizing the brain is the one that's doing all the listening and all the functioning. That whatever you're looking outwards towards is simply a mechanism to maintain your focus, to help you. Just don't get so caught up in that layer that becomes the mainstay of what your concern is. Remembering it's about changing yourself. That's what you're trying to do. It doesn't matter how you do it or how you believe it's being done. What matters is the change in your life. And only you can judge that. Only you internally can do that. We can have horrible lives and lie to everybody, and they think, oh, I wish I had their life. And they have no idea how much crap we're hiding inside of us. That is a strictly personal thing. However, depending on the level of it and how it functions, it'll emerge from you. It does come out. And that's how we observe what people are about. And just like religion, when it comes to this kind of spiritual seeking, there are a lot of part-time people doing it. People that don't have 100% dedication to it. When you really make this your top priority in life, there's a difference. It will really work. If you just kind of dabble with it here and there, those are the kind of results you're going to get too. However you apply yourself is going to be reflective of the measure of success that you have as well. Next, there ought to be a wise person among you. When the fruit was ripe, he came quickly with his sickle in his hand, and he harvested it. Whoever has ears to hear should hear. I just combined those last three. There ought to be a wise person among you. I don't see that one as being an inner spiritual teaching. That's more of a... That one sounds kind of funny, doesn't it? I hope somebody's smart enough there. That's what it sounds like to me. When the fruit was ripe, he came quickly with his sickle in his hand and he harvested it. Fruit is manifestations of what you're seeking, what you're looking for, what's happening. Fruit is what happens in the physical world. The fruit is the results of everything else. So in this case, whatever you're looking for is there. You see it, and it seems out of reach. Go for it. Don't be afraid to do what you need to do to move ahead. Take the steps. Change relationships. Leave relationships. Do whatever is necessary to move along if you are compelled to do so. If not, well, it's not going to work in the same manner like we just talked about. Whoever has ears to hear should hear. That's code for figure this out. Okay, let's move on to verse 22. Jesus saw infants being suckled. He said to his disciples, "These little ones being suckled are like those who enter the kingdom." They said to him, "Then will we enter the kingdom as little ones?" Jesus said to them, "When you make the two into one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, and the above like the below, that is, to make the male and the female into a single one, so that the male will not be male and the female will not be female. And when you make eyes instead of an eye, and a hand instead of a hand, and a foot instead of a foot, an image instead of an image, then you will enter the kingdom." Okay, if you're following along from the beginning, this should be emerging as something that sounds incredibly familiar. This is Jesus teaching what Jesus teaches, or rather, what this block of teaching, whoever it comes from, continues to say. The infants being suckled. These are little babies. These are ones that are so young, they don't have ideas about the world on their own. They're totally open. They are open to everything. And he's telling his disciples that those are the ones who will enter the kingdom. And in this case, the disciples, we presume, are us, the people that are looking for answers. The kingdom of heaven within. You know, a Christian can look at this and say, yes, babies get to go to heaven and they don't have to be Christians because they're too young to know the difference. Okay, that's fine. I've got a relative that says, oh, that means, and he's a Christian, and what he says is that means you are supposed to stay curious, that children are curious, and he took that to mean that as long as he kept learning about Christianity, he was doing what a child would do. That is an incredibly limiting way of looking at this. Remember in episode number 2 where I covered the really short verse and why it's so complete without having a lot of details. Children are curious, yes, but they are many, many, many things beyond that. Saying that curiosity is it is really taking out the lesson of this. Children don't care when they look at life about sorry if this is getting repetitive, but the teaching is this way. They don't care what color you are. They don't care if you have some sort of headdress on your head. They don't care what your cultural differences are. They only want to live life and be non-judgmental. And if everybody was like that, the world would be at peace. The problem is we grow up and we cease to be like that. The objective in the teachings from Jesus is to get back to that point where you don't have those judgments. In the next verse, it begins to detail some of that a little bit. When you make the two into one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, and the above like the below. Once those infants begin to grow up, they become two people. And by that, again, what I mean is that our conscious mind and our subconscious mind begin to diverge. Your beliefs, your judgments, your prejudices, your experiences, your pain, the things that you begin to compartmentalize in your life experiences make one part of you become one thing, while consciously you don't like those things, you don't like those people, you don't like this experience. You went from this pure, I'm okay with everything, to, okay, I'm no longer that way anymore. Now I have conflict. I have become two. Making the inside like the outside and the above like the below are all ways of saying to do this, to recombine those two. That if you're on this path and you want to find the kingdom of heaven within, you have to find a way to bring those two parts of you back together to where your conscious mind and your subconscious mind are operating in complete concert, and that it's love and peace and joy. Because that's what he teaches elsewhere. Not necessarily in this verse, love, peace, and joy, but when you look at a child, that's what you see. You don't see somebody who is judgmental. So that is where we see that we're supposed to combine these two again. In the next line, it says that is to make the male and the female into a single one. This harkens to an Asian teaching, or this idea in spiritual teachings where people are using other verbiage to describe things, where the male is conscious and the female is the subconscious, or that these are terms used to represent that. When you make the male and the female into a single one, it's to make your conscious and your subconscious into a single one again. So that the male will not be male and the female will not be female. These two have diverged. Your male part, your female part. This is everybody. This isn't about man or woman. This is about conscious, subconscious. They didn't have those terms. They probably would have said today, conscious and subconscious. But they taught it male and female. Again, they're teaching lessons to a very uneducated population. There were no schools. People could not read and write. They told stories. The stories had to travel. They had to be fun and interesting. They had to be, magical and mystical. Imagine living in that time and having no media, and your daily routine was just to get up, eat what you could, and go to work all day long and come back and eat what you can, go to bed and get up and do it again. You didn't have electricity. You didn't log on. You had nothing. Imagine life back then. These stories would have been incredibly wonderful. And they wouldn't have gone very far if they were in plain language, number one. And number two, again, they didn't know we had a brain. They didn't know how this worked. Male and female, that's it. And when you make the eyes instead of an eye, and a hand instead of a hand, and a foot instead of a foot, an image instead of an image, then you will enter the kingdom. Here what we see is perhaps this idea that when you take what you have learned from visualizing things, when you see things and you perceive them, you got to get rid of that. You have to make a new way of seeing life. Get rid of what you have learned culturally, from your family, from your religion, from your wherever you are, and understand that around the world, if you were raised somewhere else, you would have a different belief, a different feeling about things. In order to see things accurately, let go of what you think you see. Create eyes instead of an eye, and a hand instead of a foot, and a hand instead of a hand, and a foot instead of a foot, an image instead of an image, all of the same things. Where you go, what you do, the things that you think you see in life, and understand that you're actually very small on a global scale, and being very ensconced in your locality. You have to step back from it all to see the big picture and to understand you're just a part of a system. And if you want to find the kingdom of heaven within, you have to let that stuff go. You have to step back from it. You can't look at people and judge them on their appearance or their beliefs or their looks or anything like that. Okay, next verse we have, Jesus says, I will choose you 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one. I'll be honest, as much as this one is something that I find simple and telling, it makes me a little sad too. The way I read this one is not a personal spiritual lesson that you have to accomplish something here in order to continue moving along the path. This one is saying that when I choose you, of course, that's not Jesus himself, the Son of God, choosing somebody as Christians. No, this is the Christ consciousness that is available and who uses it, who seeks it, who becomes somebody who follows this path or follows any sort of a monastic path. Look around the world, whether you're seeing Taoist or Buddhist or Hindu or Christians that try to follow the teachings of Jesus as opposed to worshiping Jesus like the Romans said. There's not going to be many people. 1 from 1,000 means to me like if you are by yourself, you're living a monastic lifestyle, there's only 1 out of 1,000, and I don't think those are exact numbers. I think that he's saying very rarely, as an individual, as a single individual, are you going to make this path? Most people won't. And 2 from 10,000, that's even bigger. That means if you are in a relationship with somebody or you're combined with somebody in some way, shape, or form, you have a life partner, the 2 of you being on this path together to get to this point is even more rare than just 1 of you doing it. 1 of you doing it, it's a lot easier. 2 of you doing it together, boy, that's difficult. We kind of understand from a monastic lifestyle that they advocate not being married, not being attached to somebody in a way that requires you to have to sacrifice. Most humans need that. Most humans need to be in a relationship. This is kind of saying this path is a rare path. It's not for everybody. What makes people get on this path? I don't know. Personality, coupled with experience, coupled with opportunity, coupled with there's a lot of things that have to happen, including the person being the kind of person who says, oh yes, I can see that I am carrying my life and my experiences based on my perceptions. The vast majority of the people that we know will tell you at the end of the day that they're doing what they are doing and they're thinking what they're thinking and they're experiencing life because they have to, because of what is happening around them. They're not going to make this path. They're not. And that's why I'm sad about it. It's like, this is not for everybody. I live in a place where the North End is a very liberal, very forward kind of place like this. And you can talk to people there that say, oh, there's this big change coming about. You can see this wave of understanding sweeping the world. And you look at them and go, you don't get out of the North End very much, do you? The world is not going this way. I mean, there's more and more people, and there's more people getting exposed to it, and they're looking for answers, yes. But there's just as many people out there, increasing by the same ratio, that are still very hateful, still very judgmental, still very much about this idea that the supernatural is what is in charge, and we're just going to preach that and drive that down people's throats. And, you know, this kingdom of heaven within is for here and now. Moreover, and this is where I really diverge and become this kind of isolationist sort of a person, is that, you know, here in the West, are significantly in places like this, we have people going to hot yoga classes and, you know, their Kundalini practices, meditations after work. And when they get done, they go back to normal lives. They focus on trying to forget about what happened, ignoring the things that they don't want to deal with the idea that if you continue to act this way, that they will eventually fade. And many of the stuff will. Many of the things will actually fade. But it depends on what it is. You can't treat this childhood fear of losing your bicycle because somebody stole your favorite bike when you were a kid with being molested repeatedly by the nasty uncle that always threatened to beat you up if you ever told anybody. You can't just ignore everything away. Some things have to be dealt with. And a lot of what we do in spiritual learning, in westernized spiritual learning, is designed to try and help you deal with the pain and live with the pain and let the pain go away gradually, as opposed to just saying, wait a minute, I can go after this really aggressively and just take care of it. Again, I'll tell you from experience, it's hard. Think about it. If you have issues that you need to deal with, how comfortable do you feel with understanding that you need to deal with them? It took a lot for me to get to a point where I thought, I have to tell somebody some things. I can't just keep carrying it inside of me, hoping that it's going to go away, because it kept acting out. It kept hurting me. It kept hurting my relationships. It was failure mechanisms that I was dragging with me. And at some point I went, oh God, I gotta deal with this stuff. And there's only one way to deal with it. And it makes you sweat. It makes you shake. It makes you scared. And, that's the warrior's path. It seems rather aggressive, but at no point in time in my thinking or in my learning, in my exploring life, in studying all the different things that I've studied, do any of the masters tell you, just forget about it, ignore it, it'll go away. That's kind of a modern thing. And I don't think that that's how you take care of things. It depends on what they are. Somebody called you a bad name one time and you think about it and go, you know what, I was really embarrassed by that. And you can mentally deal with that and go, okay, yeah, I can let that go. It doesn't bother me anymore. That was that person's problem. But that's a pretty lightweight issue. There are issues that are incredibly hurtful, incredibly hard. And those require something different. You cannot so what or ignore those away. You know that because they continue to hurt you whether you tell anybody about them or not. It's an inner thing. Remember, Jesus went and cleaned out the whole place. He didn't ignore anything. And even though I would recommend that anybody and everybody do this, I am completely unqualified. I'm not a psychologist. Some people should probably see a psychologist. You should talk this out with somebody that is someone that you can trust. Basically what I'm doing is being my own psychologist and dealing with things that you really don't want to deal with. And I can tell you from my experience in life and going through stages of learning this and thinking, oh, this is so incredible. Everybody's going to want to know. And I opened up about it. I stripped naked. There's that process. I used to work with a guy that I know through his upbringing had been molested, had issues I'm not going to get into, but he was in an orphanage. And when I was able to freely talk about this, he hated me for it. He would tell people things that were very hurtful things that were, oh, Dan got molested. I can't use the verbiage. I don't want to post a video. He got screwed and he likes it because he's got to tell everybody. That's hurtful stuff. You got to protect yourself. Stay away from environments where you're all excited and think everybody wants to hear this. They don't. Those are the 1,000 out of the 1 or the 10,000 out of 2. There's a lot more of those people than there are of you. Find your brother and guard them like the pupil of your eye. Find the person that you can trust, that you can talk this out with, and do it with them. These are lessons that are all there that that I found by stumbling into them and treating them I was very cumbersome. I didn't know what to do. So anyway, be careful. Okay, enough on that. You know what, I'm trying to detail what I believe these verses mean and apply them to something in life to give you an example of what I did. Again, like I reiterate in all of my videos, I don't tell you what to do. This is something nobody can tell you what to do. This is something you learn and go, I have to decide for myself whether or not I want to do that. You only hurt people by trying to force them into getting better. This is for the people that are seeking and that are going, my God, nothing is working. What do I do? And not everybody is going to listen to what I've done and think that this is the right thing. And that's okay. I'm just laying food on the table. You don't have to eat it. It's not palatable for everybody. If it's not your thing, I wish you the best. Good luck. Okay, let's move on. Verse number 24. His disciples said, "Show us the place where you are, because it is necessary for us to seek it." He said to them, "Whoever has ears should hear. Light exists inside of a person of light, and he shines on the whole world. If he does not shine, there is darkness." Honestly, this is one where it doesn't sound like he answered the question that was asked. He had to divert. They asked him, "Show us the place where you are, because it is necessary for us to seek it." And then he starts off with, "Whoever has ears should hear," which is, okay, figure this out. It's not in plain language. Understand the depths of what I'm getting ready to tell you. Light exists inside of a person of light. It kind of alludes to confirmation of the last verse, that there are people that are made this way, and that they have that light inside of them, and that they will shine on the world. But if they don't shine, there is darkness. I don't get that part. Who knows? But anyway, I don't see anything here that you have to do in order to make any life changes. I think it's just telling us that it's not for everybody, and that not everybody is going to do this. And it's not because the information isn't available. It's because the way that you must apply your own personal inner thinking is just not a common human characteristic. We're all created equal, but we're not created with the same drives and desires. There's differences. Some people are extroverts. They have to be with people all the time. Can you imagine if Buddha or Jesus or whatever were like that? They spent time, hours, days off meditating or off on their own, praying, fasting, all the different terms that are used like that. They were very contemplative, inner looking, very reflective personalities. And that's perhaps, I don't know if that's a requirement or not. Probably not. I think that there are some outgoing people. It's hard to say. And I don't mean outgoing. Introversion is not shyness. Introversion is just, I need to be alone. I have time. I have to take time to go think for myself. I don't want to be talking about things that are unimportant. Next verse, number 25. Jesus says, "Love your brother like your life. Protect him like the apple of your eye." I don't get that one as a personal inner teaching. Brother, sister, in the way that I understand Jesus' teaching, are the people that are like you, that are on this path. They're not your biological brothers and sisters. Your biological family is not the family that is your spiritual family necessarily. So in this verse, I think, love your brother like your life. Love the person who is on this path with you. Work together. Find the people that are like you and protect them, guard them, stick with them. Share. Do this sort of stuff with people. Moving on to verse number 26 now, Jesus says, "You see the splinter that is in your brother's eye, but you do not see the beam that is in your own eye. When you remove the beam from your own eye, then you will see clearly enough to remove the splinter from your brother's eye. This one's very easy. You know, when you start out in life and you're a kid and you're little, you have all these deja vu, all these thoughts. You know so many things. Your mind is very kind of pure. It's not blocked off with things. As you grow, as you pick up all of these characteristics and beliefs, you begin to kind of shut down because all these other qualities about you are occupying brain space that were once available for this free flow of knowledge and information are now being kind of shut down. Now you've got kind of filters going on. This is closing your mind's eye. This is when the beam is in your eye, the piece of wood, the splinter, the whatever it is, you are blinded. You have got things in your way so that you can't see clearly. And we tend to like to go along in life and tell people, here's your problem. Here's what you need to do. And meanwhile, we don't have our own stuff resolved. So what we're really telling them and showing them and seeing in them is based on what we're experiencing through our own judgment and our own filters. And even though we might be right about some things, we may not be very good at giving them a good course of action because we're not understanding them. Instead of saying, I'm going to help you through that spot, you're telling them, ooh, here's your problem right here. Leading and directing are two different things. What this is basically saying, though, is that if you haven't gone on this path and if you haven't cleared yourself back out, if you haven't got back to that point of understanding and gotten the wood, the blindness, whatever it is that's clogging your own mind's eye, you're not going to help other people. If you do get that stuff out, then you can see what they're going through very clearly. You've been there. You've done that. You've experienced that. You can see them and go, oh, I get that. I know it experientially. Not only did I fall into that, but I found a way to realize it. I found a way to rectify it. Now you can help them. You have removed the beam from your own eye, and you can see clearly enough to help them. Next verse, number 27. If you do not abstain from the world, you will not find the kingdom. If you do not make the Sabbath into a Sabbath, you will not see the Father. Simple, real easy. Abstain from the world. Let it go. Turn off the TV, turn off the media, turn off all the things that have got you angry and riled. By understanding that, yeah, that's injustice. Yes, it's not okay. But you're only adding to it. If you want to change the world, you don't fight what you don't like. You create what you do like. You become the embodiment of something different. You step out of this teeter-totter of left and right and anger and fighting back and forth. Instead of being a participant in one side or the other, you step back, you let go of the ends, you achieve balance by grabbing the middle, letting go of the ends. You have to let go of what is happening out there. And it's not just the news, it's the people, it's the relationship, it's your neighbor, it's your wife and kids, husband, whatever. You have to step back and let everybody be themselves while you travel on your path. You've got to let go. You've got to abstain from the world. Otherwise, you're caught up in the world. You are going along with that wave instead of charting your own course. And if you do not make the Sabbath into a Sabbath, you will not see the Father. This is not literally taking Sunday and going to church. This is literally taking the time to study, to watch videos like this, to go grab books, to fill up your library with a variety of things that are meaningful to you, that are helping you along your path. The Father, this is used, and I'm sure it must have some cultural implications, but the idea that the Father is the one that has a handle on things. The Father makes everything okay. The Father is the part of you that manages everything and has a handle on everything in life. If you want to see that part of you, if you want to see the part that is okay, you have to study. You have to Yeah, you got to maintain that. And you've got to, the Sabbath is taking the time to do it. You can't just academically read a couple of books and you're good. Go to a few classes and then return to normal life. You have to dedicate yourself. But I find personally that I don't know if it's something you have to do. I think that people that do it are compelled to do it. They're somehow wired to be that way. And if you're not gonna do it. And I don't think, if I was doing something and I didn't apply myself because I wasn't that interested, no amount of somebody telling me you need to put more time into it would make me put more time into it. I do what I want to do. And that's pretty much the way people are. If you're on this path and you're compelled to do it, it's because you're compelled to do it. And people better get out of your way. So at any rate, that's it on this one. I think that I better wrap up this video. I'm having a great time working through all of these, and it actually teaches me more as I go along. You understand things a lot better when you figure it out enough to try and explain it. I'm looking forward to continuing on with decoding the rest of the verses of the Gospel of Thomas. Looks like it's going to take a few more episodes, doesn't it? Okay. I still contend that there is just one truth, and that we're getting to it. See you next time.